Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montavilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Baby Lock Verve. In this video, we're going to talk about the operations panel. Now, when you first turn on your machine, it takes a little bit for the electricity to get through everything, and this is the screen you'll probably get. Now, if you touch the screen, it goes right into the sewing. Now, in the settings menu, which I go into in a different video, but in the settings menu, you can turn it so that when your machine turns on, this is the screen you get. Okay, to start with, we have these buttons down here. Now, this is the back button, and basically what that does is it takes the screen to the previous screen. This is the lockout key. Now, it's a really handy key to have because if you're changing the needle, you don't want to accidentally push the foot control and make the machine go. But you can, when that's locked out, you can push any button and it's not going to, it's just going to stay still. So it's a great safety feature. So just press it again to turn it off. Now, this one is your page turning key, forward or backwards. For instance, we've got 5 pages here in this particular category. We can page ahead, or you can actually, starting on page 1, page back to page 5. Here is the sewing key. Now, when you are in sewing mode and you don't have the embroidery attachment attached, this is what you can do these kind of stitches. If you have your embroidery unit attached, the embroidery unit looks like this, then you won't be able to use this key because for obvious reasons you won't be able to do regular sewing with your embroidery attachment. So I'm going to show you going like this. When you do that, this gives you the various different categories of stitches. You have your utility stitches, which is that first screen that it came up as. You have several decorative stitches, you have buttonholes, satin stitches, cross stitches. Now, notice there's some of them that are blue and some of them that are yellow. And there's some similarities between some of them here. That's because the ones in the yellow category are the kind of stitches that you can combine with other stitches. The blue category you cannot combine, although you can make it so that you, for instance, sew a single little star if that's what you want to do. Okay, now let's, and down here, I'm going to just show you this. This little thing here is where you would get into the memory of your machine, and we're going to show you about memorizing and retrieving stitch combinations in a different video. This one here is if you decide to save something on like a USB stick, and that would be where you'd plug it in over here. Okay, so to get back into regular sewing, just press utility stitches, and there we go. Now this one here is your embroidery. You can get into different embroidery designs. For instance, I'm going to go to exclusives here, Country Garden. We've got 2 pages here. I'm going to go ahead. And here we got a little wagon, and that's a really cute one. Now notice that little blinking thing? That just means that you cannot use the small hoop. You got to use your regular 4-inch hoop that comes with your machine. So I'm going to go back and go back again. And we're not going to do embroidery right now, but just know that even though the embroidery unit is not set up, you can still get in and choose a design, edit it, and save it while you're still in the sewing mode. Okay, now we got the setting. Here, I'm going to go back to regular sewing here. We got the settings button here, and I do have a different video on using the settings, but just know that you push that button and you can get in. There's like 8 pages that you can fine-tune your machine. You can make it so that the opening screen isn't there. You just have the sewing screen. And then to get out of that, I just push the back button. This one's a nice handy one to have. This is going to show you, like, if you need a little refresher on how to thread your machine, or maybe how to put the embroidery unit on, how to change the foot, how to put the bobbin in, things like that. It gives you a little refresher on that, so you don't have to always get out your book to do that. So it's a nice thing to have that. Now I'm going to use the back button to get out of there. Okay, up here we have the touch screen. Now, it also gives you information. We've chosen this particular stitch, the 1-03. That's a center needle position. when we turn this on, it will give us a back stitch at the beginning, and then we push the back stitch button at the end of sewing, it will give a back stitch at the end. I can turn that off, and then it would just sew straight without giving a back stitch at the beginning. Now, if I chose this one here, it would give a locking stitch in place as long as I have that on. I can also turn on this button here, which is going to cut the thread automatically as soon as it's done the locking stitch. Again, at the end of your stitching, you would need to push your back stitch button so this machine knows to do the locking stitch and cut your thread. Now, if I turn this off, it also turns off the cutter button. That's actually my, that center needle position is my favorite stitch for just regular sewing. Now, here, up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see where it looks like the needle's coming down. That means when the machine rolls to a stop, and before I've pushed the cutter button, that machine, the needle will be down into the fabric, which is a convenient thing if you want to lift up your presser foot, look at your stitches, turn it back, you haven't lost your place. So, but that can also be changed in settings so that the needle is up when it rolls to a stop. The recommended foot is the J foot for this particular stitch, but if you had chosen a different stitch, maybe a decorative stitch, you might recommend a different foot. And also, if you do buttonholes, it's going to show you the buttonhole foot. Now, so these stitches, whatever stitch you choose, is the stitch you're going to get. So I'm going to page ahead. I'm going to choose a zigzag stitch. Okay, up here we have the width of that stitch, the length of that stitch, and the left-right shift. The way to change those is this little button right here. So I can change it to be wider, I can change it to be longer, and I can also shift the entire stitch to one side or the other, depending, and without changing the length or width of the stitch. That's what left-right shift means. Now, to get it back into default, that's what this little button is right here. But let's say every time you sew a zigzag, you tend to want it a little bit longer and maybe a little bit wider, and you don't want to have to figure that out every single time you push that. You can actually save that right there, and what that's going to do is, let's say you get out of that stitch, get back into that stitch. Now the settings that you have saved are going to be there every single time, even after you've turned off the machine. Really nice feature. To get it back into default, push that button again. There's default. Notice the default has the white letters on the, or the white numbers on the black background. But then you also need to push save. So that's your save button. That's your default button. OK just means it gets back out of that. OK. So I already talked about the automatic tie-off and the automatic cutting. Down here it's going to show you what your stitch looks like. And you can change the color of that. It just changes the color on the screen. So now it's red, now it's black. Sometimes it's easier to see, but it's not going to keep that. It's just going to show you, give you the option to change that color each time you press that button. You can make it larger to see what it looks like. That's really helpful if you have a complicated stitch combination and you want to just make sure everything's just right. Making it a little bit larger can help you see that. Okay, I'm going to get out of that. And then we have this button here to make adjustments. Now, when you have a stitch that you want to flip over, and this one it doesn't really show that much. I'm going to go ahead and choose something. I'm going to get out of that. Back button. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Let's say, oh yeah, it gives you the little, do you want to cancel this? That's really nice. Okay, page back here to this little alligator. Okay, if I get into this and I want the alligator so he's the other way, I can do that. So now the baseline is right here. So you can have a little line of alligators going on the bottom of a jacket or something for a little kid. That's what that button does, is it flips it over. Now if you turn it back the other way so it's not highlighted, it's back to original. This is your back to the beginning button, and what that does is, let's say you started sewing something, a little sample, with a color of thread that you thought was the right color, but it turns out it wasn't the right color. You could push the back to the beginning button, change your thread, to the color that, another color to try out, and it gets you back to the beginning of your stitch pattern. Same thing with a stitch combination, it gets you back to the beginning of the combination or the lettering. Now, let's see what that looks like. So this is a single little alligator. I'm going to go back here and I've canceled that. And I want to show you, okay, let's go to this. And go forward, and we're going to go a little star there. Okay, so I'm going to get back into this. If I want to do just a single star, I push this button, and that gives me a single star. So that's what that means there. And notice that was in the blue area. If we're in the yellow area, it will give you a line of motifs, and I'll get more into that when we do our stitch combinations. But just know that that's what that's for, is to give either a whole line of stars or the motif, the stitch you choose, or a single one. Okay, back out of that. All right, and that's basically your operations panel. There's a lot you can do. I invite you to just experiment with it, try it out, use some of those scraps of fabric that you have. You may want to use a tearaway stabilizer when you're doing these decorative stitches, because that's going to give you a little more body rather than just using a regular old piece of quilting cotton. It kind of, you've noticed what it looks like when you do a zigzag and it kind of scrunches it up. A little bit of stabilizer on the back is going to make it nice and flat and a beautiful stitch. So try these things out. Have fun with your machine. I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you have, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. We have lots of other videos on this machine and on other machines here at on our Montavilla YouTube channel. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.